Well, I think that on that note, we might as well turn it over to a much more positive, one of our newer segments that's going to have a really positive angle this week. Our badass of the week.
Boom, boom.
We have several worthy nominees, but there's going to be one obvious one at the end that we'll get to that I think everyone will agree upon should be our badass of the week. But I sent you my notes, had too many stats for me to memorize. So I think I sent you everything there.
Yeah.
What
You
do we
ready?
have here on our list of nominees?
We've got Drew Smiley, who
Of
you
course.
talked about earlier, perfect through 7. Jan Gomes did his best. Brian Urlacher on him.
Yeah.
7 2/3 inning, 1 hit, 10 Ks.
10 Ks. That's the part of it. He had already had 10. Well, maybe he ended up with 10 Ks because I think he eventually ended up with 7 2/3 innings.
Yeah, that's what I just said. Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Come on, pay attention.
Yeah. Well, he lost the perfect game with just going into the 7th, but.
And I replied to Smitty when he said about him for a badass nomination of the week. I said a badass would have completed the deal, but he did not. So
he would have broken the tackle
and
thrown him out anyway.
Exactly. Eduardo Rodriguez against Baltimore. He's
the Tigers. Eduardo Rodriguez for the second week in a row. I'm nominating for badass of the week.
Perfect through 7. Sounds familiar. 1 hit, 6 Ks, no runs over his last 17 innings.
And that's where I brought him up because it's kind of combines last week and this week. He hasn't given up a run. That's the first time in Tigers history that's ever happened through 7 in 2 consecutive starts with, I think it was at least 6 Ks. I'm forgetting that now, but
well, yeah, 6 Ks in this game, but I don't know about the last.
I think it was at least 6 Ks is where they came up with. It's a little bit of a convoluted stat, but I thought that was pretty impressive. I think they said in the major leagues, last person to do that was Jacob deGrom, so he's definitely a badass for that. So I definitely wanted to give another shout out to Eduardo because he's really having the best couple of starts in his career right there. So
does that mean he'll have to have a major arm surgery later this year?
It probably means he will opt out of his contract that he can after this season with the Tigers and leave them high and dry. So I'm a little bit nervous about that. All of a sudden he's having a career year just in time for him to get away from Detroit. But maybe Scott Harris will be wise to that and trade him at the deadline and get a massive return for it. But we'll get to that later in the season.
Our one position player that gets nominated is one of my favorite names in baseball, Nico Hoerner.
Okay.
With the Cubs, 2 home runs, 10 RBIs, a 1.049 OPS, and 1 stolen base over the last week. That was a lot of that damage was done in LA, I believe. Right?
His actually stolen base production has gone way down as he was leading the majors with 8. I think he's only up to 9 now over the last week. So he's got to pick that up. But yeah, Nico he's just on all sides of the ball. He's producing, and it's cool to see, especially after he just signed his 3-year, $35 million extension. As he is as good a second baseman as the Cubs could hope for right now.
Yeah, they didn't even need to sign anyone in the off season. They didn't need a big free agent second baseman. They didn't even need Nick Madrigal. They needed Nico Hoerner. He was there the whole fucking time.
Well, I think the obvious, though, the winner, the unanimous winner of our badass of the week is Liam Hendriks for beating the shit out of cancer.
In a very he's an aggressive guy, and he did it in an aggressive manner. I mean, I don't know that any of us necessarily expected to hear already that, I was asked, Smitty and I pre-gamed on what to talk about in this segment. And, he's announced cancer-free. That is that's always a bit of an overstatement. When it comes to cancer, I unfortunately have way too much.
You have a lot of family experience with that. So
in this area, what it basically means is the cancer's dormant. You always have it. In fact, most doctors will tell you we all have it. It's just dormant in our bodies, but it basically means there's no activity anymore. It is at a standstill.
He pounded that shit into submission in a matter of weeks, couple months is all.
I mean, it was announced right as we were going into spring training.
Yeah.
And between mid-February and last week, I mean, he has gone
Finished
through the
his chemo.
treatments. Yeah. And so Rick Hahn did come out and said, this is great news. This is the kind of thing. Yeah, I almost thought the Sox were maybe going to go on a little winning streak in that. I said they've celebrated by 7 straight losses, the pieces of shit. But he still has a couple of medical hurdles / clearances he has to receive before he can resume a full card of baseball activities, but he has stayed in shape.
Yeah.
He was practicing. He was at spring training throwing.
We saw him a few times. Yeah. That was cool.
So, I think since they didn't put him on the 60-day DL, I believe they anticipate seeing him before sometime in June, probably end of May, early June.
I have a feeling they're keeping their options open. There's just no way to know. I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, how his body responds, how it recovers from the chemo. What kind of condition he'd be in, what his production, what his arm really looks like, what his command looks like. Those are all huge variables that it's smart just to keep their options open. To speculate on a timeline, there's no way Rick Hahn's going to do that, or we're not going to hear about that.
Anyone should. Yeah.
Right. But at least, that first major milestone that, he's completed his chemo and it is dormant and remission, cancer-free, however you want to term it. That is tremendous news, faster than I think anyone could have hoped for. It is just awesome. So I don't know how else to put it other than Liam Hendriks is our badass of the week.
I can't disagree. And folks, if you're really looking at the negative side of Liam Hendriks winning badass of the week, it took someone to beat cancer on the White Sox to win badass of the week.
Wow. Yeah. As the first 2 weeks went to Cubs.
Yeah. By some narrow margins, though. But
yep.
yeah. All right.
Well, we'll have another badass of the week. We'll see if we can get more White Sox. Tiger almost won.
Got a lot of work to do, the White Sox, to get in there again.
It can happen. It can all happen in 1 week.
It could all happen on Friday night.
Wordhole Media.